Alright,
So everyone's tried to figure out how much taxes could Water Street possibly bring in? And the answer is, we don't know. The reason we don't know is property values change every year. State law dictates how property values change. New economic conditions come into effect frequently, and new developments are really expensive. The way our assessor determines sale prices are different depending on the type of land use. So there's the sales comparison approach, which everyone who owns a house in the city, their house is valued based on a 2-year sales analysis set and kind of frozen based on when you bought your house. And so every 2 years, the city will reassess your property and kind of increase it in two values, but that's the sales comparison. Then there's the income approach, which is typically done through residential apartments or commercial apartments, where how much income are you bringing in, that assigns the value, and there's a formula. And the cost approach, and this is a commercial or industrial style way of assessing property taxes, which is taking square footage and location and kind of matching those. So when you're coming to a development like Water Street, you have rental, you're gonna have probably some commercial. And then also probably not industrial, but realistically, commercial can go either on the cost or the income approach, whereas any single family or duplex being built will be done the sales comparison approach. So it's really challenging to kind of set a value. With that said, I kind of tried to pull some numbers, and I think the numbers that I pulled are very conservative. And so to give everyone kind of an understanding, right now, the city's total taxable value is $433 million. Okay, that's easy to digest. Looking at estimated development, we've kind of put that number at 150 million. Okay, which would give a taxable value of $75 million, which is a lot. And that would bring in an estimated $5 to $6 million. Okay, a revenue. Now, that's in all taxes being levied, that's not to the city. The city would be 1.7 to 1.9 million dollars, which would be a huge impact to the city's budget. However, yes,
Who gets the remaining money?
the county, the state, schools,
Any of that federal money?
no.
Okay.
Oh. One of the problems that we have in the state is we have two competing property. You guys will get this presentation at the end of it.
yeah, I'll
The
send it
reason
out.
why we haven't sent it out is if you have questions, I might be able to add a slide real quick or add some context. And so I want to make sure you have the full information based on the questions you asked in the presentation. So you will get it at latest tomorrow. So please don't feel like if you can take pictures, but you're gonna get these slides with maybe a little bit more. Okay. The state of Michigan, one of the constraints, and I know Mayor and Steve and Mr. Crisno understand this very well, we are constrained in how property taxes are collected by two competing laws that are in the state constitution, which is the Headley Amendment, which means if your taxable value goes up, your millage rate rolls back, and then Prop A, which means your property value is set and it can only go up cost of living. And so depending on how much value you're adding to your city, the city's ability to collect taxes is constrained. Okay, so that's kind of the development scenario. Now, for a much smaller development, in the city that's being talked about right now, they're talking about it being $150 million for about a 4-acre parcel. And so realistically, this is very small. However, if we're talking about more not extremely high density residential, the $150 million is probably a little bit more realistic. If we're talking about much more dense, high urban development, we'll get into some of the challenges there. This is way low, but I felt like it was good to kind of show you what that means. And we also calculated it based on developments in the city that have happened that would kind of equal about 31 acres. Like Clark Road and Thompson Block and town center even, and things like that. So we kind of try to take it, and that's where we got to the $150 million value. However, once again, if we developed every inch of the 31 acres, it's gonna be much higher than $150 million. And then, yeah, I think I said it, but taxes, you take the value, cut it in half, and that's how you get the assessed value. So that's what we got, $75 million in estimated tax. Any questions on that?
Yes. In your $150 million, how much of that is utility infrastructure?
Probably 20%. It depends.
Does that fall in the same taxable category?
Yes, well,
Because that's city infrastructure.
it depends. So for any development, the city does not have to put in that infrastructure. The developer would have to actually install that infrastructure. And so it would end up being turned back over to the city, but it would be part of the development. You're giving me a look, and so
I'm just thinking through whether
the city would
it will actually inform the tax structure in the coming years.
So the city wouldn't be installing roads for a new development. The
I'm thinking of
developer,
like sewer lines.
sewer lines, the developer would have to bring the sewer line from the tap. So, and this doesn't count for the sewer line running down Michigan. Right, the developer would have to bring it from Michigan Avenue.
Okay, and the other question is, how much of the 150 million is brownfield? Dealing with
We're gonna-
brownfield issues.
We're gonna get to that.
Okay.
Before we go forward, what I want to ask, based off this question, are you saying that the money that's being made for the sewer or whatnot, the developer had to pay that, even though it's gonna still come back to the city? So it's not like coming out of the city dime, even though it's part of the.
Yes, so for a developer to put in water and sewer lines, roads, and it really depends on how it's all negotiated in the overall package. The developer has to pay. Okay, now with water and sewer lines, the developer has to put it in, but then Yucca is the one that owns the water and sewer lines eventually, but you have to service your properties. And so, so Yucca is not out any money to install the new water and sewer lines, but they are owned at the end. Streets, same way. A lot of developments outside of the city of Ypsilanti have private roads in their development. The city has really tried not to do that. Now there's private parking lots within developments, but roads, the city hasn't really, we don't have any private roads in the city. We have some alleys that are kind of private and kind of shared, but for the most part, we don't have any private roads. That is something that the city could consider in Water Street. It just depends on what this committee would recommend. There's pros and cons to both, because you can have a lot more control on a private road, but you also have to maintain a public road, whereas the developer would have. Yes,
What would be the benefit of having a private road?
that we would not have to maintain it. We wouldn't have to plow it, we wouldn't have to fix it. Nothing.
Liability mostly.
At that point, it would essentially be a gated community.
I mean, it could be, however, the city would never allow a gated community based on their zoning. So, could be, yes, we would never allow that.
I have a card, I thought I heard something, so these estimates are based on development of 4 acres, does that make sense?
No, but you can get $150 million easily on a 4-acre parcel. Okay, however, and if taking everything, $150 million was kind of the first estimate, it could be $450 million. But what I wanted to do is kind of take a number that is digestible based on what is on the ground right now. And it depends on the density of housing.
Sorry, one more.
Yep.
150 is like all of the money that the developer is putting into a 4-acre parcel, you know, hypothetically, 150 million, or it's what they would expect to earn after they develop it.
We'll get a little bit of it out.
Okay,
Okay.
so, okay,
No, there's a lot that I'd
Yeah.
like, you know, I think we're on slide 3 right now, so, there's a lot, no, this is, development is really complicated and it's complex, and that's why I'm here, so, but no, I will get more into the costs, okay? Sorry, I know talking about taxes and how it works is kind of boring, So one way that you can help offset some of the infrastructure costs that we've talked about is by providing incentives. So incentives can happen through tax increment financing. They can happen through pilots. These are two things the city has done in very recent history. One of the things that the city has done for every time we've done a TIF, a tax increment financing, is essentially allow for almost 100% of the value to be TIF. So it's everything but bonds and some school taxes cannot be TIF, but and it's kind of 100%. When you have, yes.
Do you do a brief explanation of what a tip is so that folks that don't know, does everyone know what a tip is?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, no, a TIF is basically, the value of the property is what it is today. Right now, it's zero, because the city owns it. A TIF basically sets the value at what it is, when it would come off the tax roll as vacant, and so there'd be a little value. And then anything above that could be captured to pay for certain improvements, which there's a laundry list that will get. Okay. One of the things that we know is development's expensive, and we're gonna really get into some of the costs on development and why things need to have some incentives. But what I've kind of done is I'm gonna show you right now. Oh, sorry, so basically, a developer can collect the increment in taxes to pay for very specific eligible expenses. Okay, and we'll get into what that is. One of the things that the city has not done in the past, but I would recommend for any development going forward, is if an incentive were to be done, it couldn't go over a 50% tip. What does that mean? It means that 50% of the value in that increment would go to the city for general operations. 50% would go to the fund to fund the improvements that need to happen. And so, and there's a lot of benefits on why taking 50% and authorizing it for TIF is important. And that's because the city only receives, almost $2 million out of the $6 million. And so we could actually receive other entities' taxes to help pay for the infrastructure on it.
Can you explain that more simply from the point of view of the developer?
Yes, so when a developer comes into a city, they are required to make a profit because they are borrowing money from a bank. Okay, and so when you are putting all the expenses on the table, they have to be able to pay back the loans they're getting for this development and make enough profit that the bank says, yes, you're not gonna go under by doing this development. And so the city can offer TIF in order to help pay for some of the eligible expenses to allow for certain things to happen to reduce the cost, so it's not as much of a burden, so the prices can be lower, and we'll get into how we've done that.
Can you briefly, make a list of things, I don't know, of that might be eligible?
That's fine. I have a laundry list, it's not a brief list, it's a comprehensive. Okay. But if we were to do, let's say, a 50% tip. And we could, let's say, hypothetically, we put $20 million, and that's for environmental work. Which we think probably $8 to $10 million after we get done spending all of our money is what's left on the environmental. And then $10 million would help go for some of the infrastructure pieces, like water and sewer lines, as well as certain roads and things. And so that means that the city, we would generate $2.5 to $3 million in annual tax revenue for the jurisdiction, while putting $2.5 to $3 million into the pot to help pay for some of these expenses. And so the city would still get a substantial tax increase while working to help pay off some of this expenses, because it is more expensive to develop a contaminated piece of property that has no infrastructure.
So just to be clear, if, for example, the developer identified a $5 million environmental problem, the city could put in, I think, based on what you said, 50% or 2.5 million. and the developer would cover the other 2.5 million.
We're gonna get
Understand
into
that
that.
correctly?
We're gonna get into kind of how a TIF plan works in like 2 slides. So, give me a little bit of time. Look. Okay, so here's a list of what you can pay, and so there's 2 different types of TIF expenses. And I'm gonna kind of read them quickly, but once again, you're gonna have these slides, so you can see, there are, brownfield eligible expenses for environmental and then non-environmental. These are the environmental. So there's what phase 2, baseline environmental sensitive. This is just kind of assessing the property, contaminated soil excavation. That's the big one. Groundwater assessments, vapor intrusion, exposure barriers and controlled due care activities, ongoing monitoring, environmental investigations, asbestos surveys, lettuce surveys, mold surveys, hazard material surveys, and pre-demolition environmental assessments. So these are the brownfield environmental eligible expenses. Okay. Now, these are the non-environmental that, at the city being what's called a core community, we can use. Now, cities like Dexter and Saline and most more affluent communities cannot use non-environmental TIF. We are allowed to, and so it's something that we can offer to help incentivize developer to come in. But we have demolition, site grading, water and sewer line extension or replacement, road construction, stormwater management, electrical service infrastructure, sidewalks, parking areas, lead and asbestos, physical removal, and then housing, which we used at Dorset's. And so these are things that we can do to actually help incentivize bringing down the cost of housing in certain areas. So we're going to get into some of the costs in a minute, but so these are the main. This is why I didn't want to talk about it there, because this is the only things you can use. Well, so you can't use brownfield TIF to, let's say, build a playground. It's not something you can do, but you can do it to actually help with, some water and sewer line cleanup.
And there's sidewalks and streetscaping, so you're, even though there's not a playground.
You could do sidewalks and streetscaping, but you cannot build a playground with TIF. And so this is where balancing, if somebody is requesting TIF, they can only pay for TIF eligible expenses that have to be approved by the county brownfield redevelopment authority, which 2 members of that board are here tonight. So there's very specific things. And so there's a huge agreement. It has to go before the city, has to go before the county brownfield authority, has to go before the county board, and then it has to go before the state agency, depending on what it is. So if it's environmental, it goes to the Eagle. If it is non-environmental or anything else but housing, it goes to the MPDC. And if it's non-environmental housing, it goes to Michigan. And so all of those agencies have to approve. So it does take a pretty lengthy time. And so that's where we're talking to Katie and kind of figuring out, it is good to understand what the committee here would like to actually be able to negotiate with ahead of time, because it's good to know if this is going to be allowed, what it is. Now, you can also pick and choose which ones you're not willing to negotiate. So if you decide, let's say sidewalks and streetscaping is not something you're interested in helping fund, you can say, that's not something we're interested in. Typically what we see in the city, and what we've approved in the past is certain demolition, some clearing, water and sewer line replacement is a big one, some road construction and stormwater services. Electrical services, not as much that we've done, but it is something that's important, especially on Water Street, because right now we have a transmission line running through it. And DTE is going to require that transmission line to be buried. And that cost is $1 million. Now, that's something where the developer is going to have to do that, but that will add $1 million to any pro forma that has to be filled. To make that happen.
And who gets to decide this is city council, correct?
Well, I believe that city council will take a recommendation from this board. So yes, city council is the one that ultimately approves it, but this board would be the one to approve it. Is that correct? Or will there be a CBO committee?
It'll be this committee. This is this committee.
Yes.
Gosh, how to word my question. Okay, so like sidewalks and streetscaping is like pennies on a project compared to a lot of the brownfield stuff. As a board, could we allocate the TIF financing to the more expensive stuff, and then the things like sidewalks and streetscaping, could we essentially require that through our value statements and like what we want to be in the project?
Yeah, so you can pick anything on here that you don't want to negotiate with, you could keep anything else in here. The reason that it's always a good tool to have is Dorsey Estates is kind of the easiest example, because most people who here has been to Dorsey Estates. Okay. Each one of those houses cost $310,000 to build all in. We sold them at maximum $235,000, I think. It's the highest sale price. Just to get the house ready to be built, that was $110,000. So that's not putting any house, that's like to put in the infrastructure, stormwater pit, the roads, the sidewalks, all of those things. So it was $110,000 just for the path. Okay. And so the reason that you want to kind of, it's a way to help bring down the cost of the development is to offer these types of, if this committee chooses. I do think the brownfield piece is much more important, but the brownfield piece is something that developing on a greenfield is something that you're never gonna have to deal with. And so this is where we can offer maybe a little bit of a bonus to a developer to come in and do the right type of development by allowing some of these incentives to be allowed. But once again, the sidewalks are typically part of a development, but once again, every little bit adds to the cost. That makes sense. Right. So what does the 50% incentive mean in practice? It means that after the TIF expires, 100% of the tax revenue goes to the taxing jurisdiction. So it allows for a temporary reinvestment of new tax revenue. It's not a tax abatement. It's basically developer and the property owners will have to pay the taxes. Part of it goes into a fund, and then it actually can reimburse for certain level expenses. Without a redevelopment on the site, the city's not gonna have any taxes. And so this is a way to not hamstring the future generations while generating taxes now. And that also allows us to have a cleaned up area and expand the tax, the tax revenues permanently, yes.
Question, so can you talk about, unless this is coming up, because it could be around, parameters for length of time, but it's
Yes.
like how long, how short are there mandates on that?
So actually, I'm not gonna get into that. So the maximum you can go for a TIF is 30 years. Looking at kind of a $20 million bucket. It's the next slide. And this is a really boring slide, but it's looking like the city could pay back if we offered interest. So we can also allow for interest to be paid in these things. It would be an 11-year payback. So what that means is the city would collect half of the revenue for 11 years. And then after 11 years, the city would collect all of the revenue. But the reason why it's important is 30 to 40% of the city's tax collection actually goes to the city. And so this would allow us to utilize even some school millage, which is fully reimbursed to the school district. So the school district isn't out for brownfield, but this would allow us to collect other millages, help pay for these expenses. And so the city would essentially get substantial revenue and utilize other taxing jurisdictions to collect additional revenue to pay for these expenses.
So the amount of time that you may negotiate for a TIF would be based on the amount
Of need.
For the project.
Yes.
I think that's important because I didn't always understand.
Yeah. No, and you know, they're a smaller project, and this is where sometimes cutting up into smaller projects have greater needs. So, you know, with Dorsey Estates, it's actually like 90% of the millage for 15 years. And that was because we substantially reduced the prices of those houses through this. And so, but this is just showing you how kind of a TIF plan works. I know that Allison and Katie are very familiar with this. And probably knows it, but essentially it talks about, you know, escalations and the taxable value and where it would come to, and then, you know, how interest is done. So you'll be able to look at this. But essentially, after 11 years, if the development is at $150 million, the revenue that would be received by the city would be $63 million.
In total.
Yeah. And but so 60 would go to the city, 63 could go to actually pay for these expenses. Yes, no.
What's the length of the longest TIF currently in effect?
For the city, 30 years.
And that's for what project?
Constant. We're in 10, 9.
So, oh,
No, I know you had your hand up.
okay, so even though I'm on the Brownsville board and I'm very familiar with TIFs, the opening up of the TIF world to affordable housing is relatively new.
Yes.
And so maybe I should know this, but Katie can attest that we're all struggling to be on board, be affordable housing experts now too, which is really hard. But I'm wondering if we don't utilize TIF, are there, like, what is another strategy? Because TIF is really powerful to get affordable housing in. TIF is a very powerful tool to get really like quality affordable housing in, right? And so and we've talked a lot about affordability. So if for some reason like TIF wasn't on the table here, like what other viable strategies are there for affordable housing in this community? Because I have to think the federal money is not flowing anymore or whatever, you know, like, can you, yeah, thank
So
you.
the only other way truly to get affordable housing, the state has a couple small programs, but for the most part, it's called a low-income housing tax credit, which is a federal program, but that has to be paired with a pilot, which is a payment in lieu of tax.
Oh, okay.
And so what a payment in lieu of tax is there's an amount of taxes that is based on the shelter rents that are paid. So it's rents minus expenses. This is what a shelter rent is. And then it's a percentage of that. And so in the city, our pilot's going in from 1% to 10%. And so those bring in anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. But the way a pilot is constructed is basically it takes that amount and it divvies it up based on the tax collection. So the county gets a tiny bit, the state gets a little bit, and so it's kind of broken out based on the rents to all those people. So the city receives very little money. Now, what we have done to help offset that is there's emergency services agreements that can be negotiated based on certain aspects to help pay for some of the services that are being provided. But pilots are really, that's more of a hammer to the system because it basically says the city doesn't collect any revenue for the most part. And so that's where TIF, you do it right, there's a way to actually use it so the city collects a good amount of revenue while subsidizing housing. And so we do have the most pilots per capita in the county.
We have a lot.
No, I know. To give you all a little bit of example, the city of Ann Arbor has about 200 more deed restricted affordable housing units than the city of Ypsilanti and they have 5 times. And so we have about, I think, 1,400 deed I think actually I have it. So we won't get to that. I can pull it up. But I know this is a very, and this is also, it's really hard to actually understand because this is also, we're assuming that the taxable value escalation will be 2% a year, some years it's more, some years less. there's so many assumptions, and that's why talking about taxable value is really hard, because it really depends on what's on the ground at that moment, and it's. All of the numbers I'm telling you are completely fictitious, because we have no idea what it's actually gonna come out to, with its time, place, and a 2-year window. Yeah.
So, to ask for more fictitious numbers, if a TIF is applied to a residence. And while you've talked a bit about Dorsey Estates, I don't think that's a good example, because they have other kind of limitations on the way they're handled and sold and so on and so forth. Assuming that we're trying to get to what I'm going to call a normal, for the sake of discussion, single family residence owned by somebody. The TIF is used to get an affordable piece of architecture out there, and someone uses it. Is there some point in time when the TIF expires, where all of a sudden the taxes change dramatically, this sort of hammer comes down, and the owner is I'm wondering, does it become a hot potato from a tax point of view? That all of a sudden it jumps in value because it's somehow, maybe a bad comparison, but like uncapped by the Headley.
So.
And all of a sudden you have a big bill.
The
Does
answer
that
to that
happen?
is no, because with TIF, your tax bill, there isn't a reduction in the tax bill. You pay your taxes, a portion of it goes to the brownfield fund that you can request a reimbursement to pay for very specific eligible expenses. So you're paying the tax bill as it stands. And so.
It's reducing
it'll
other
go up- it'll go up
expenses.
Cost of living or 5%, whatever's greater or whatever's less. Every year that's based on Prop A. And so the tax bill you pay doesn't go up more than a typical tax bill. It's just part of that money, and a 50% TIF would go into a fund that could be reimbursed to pay for very specific expenses. And so when you have a big development like would happen here, you end up having bills that pile up. Because all the bills are kind of spent at the front end, and then they're kind of waiting there. And so as the taxes come in, then you can request reimbursement based on what is collected from the taxes. And so there are a few tax programs where there is a jump. And the big one on that is that neighborhood enterprise zone, where after 15 years, you go from paying very little taxes to a huge amount of taxes. With a TIF, you're paying roughly the same amount of taxes the entire time.
Doesn't matter who owns it, sales, those sorts of things, it doesn't become uncapped.
So if you sell the property and it becomes uncapped, there will be that spike as happens in the city, which then also.
For any purchase, it's the same uncapping.
It's the same uncapping.
There's not an extra penalty because it went from TIF to non-TIF or something along those lines.
No.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yes, there's no additional.
Okay.
The TIF deals with the revenues from the taxes, not the value of the property.
Yeah, I just want to make sure there's no.
Yeah, no,
hidden something.
but, valid questions.
Okay, so now, there's a lot of things to understand, and I know I've kind of given you a very meaty presentation, and it's gonna get more meaty, and I'm sorry. One thing that we get a lot is, well, just build more density, because if you put more units in, you can make more money. Right? Like that's something that I always thought until I've learned a little bit more about it. But construction costs increase with building heights. Okay, they just do, because certain things after about 7 stories, you have to go to steel construction. There's certain things you can do. You do some we'll get into that. But realistically, costs increase with the height. So that's why you don't see a whole lot of 10-story buildings unless they're 20-story buildings. Like in Ann Arbor, you don't see a lot of 10-story buildings be built. It's 20, because the cost to build a 10-story or a 20-story, the costs are already kind of sunk in, because you're gonna need the same types of elevators and the same types of steel. The estimate don't include the remediation costs. Well, once again, they can be built into that. The residential development requirements are the strictest environmental standards. So there's certain parts of watershed that we're never going to clean up to single family residential standards. Okay. but almost any development happening in Ann Arbor are not built to single family residential standards, because that's where you have gardens and things like that. Infrastructure costs, are not included in the cost of development, and then affordable housing relies on pilot theory. But here is kind of the, how to think about it. And so, three-story building, you see a lot of those in smaller communities because it's wood frame. And those on average cost $220 to $320. Those numbers are a little bit low. They are going a little bit more. 7 stories, you can do some wood over steel, but about $330 to $600 a square foot. And then, you know, over about 10 feet to 10 stories, you have $430 to $1,000 a square foot. And we're gonna get into what the costs mean of that. But this is where, as you can see, the taller you build, more expensive per square foot it is. Now, the state is actually working to change some of the things. I've heard that they either just passed or about to pass a double staircase requirement that actually will bring down a little bit. But when you get above 7 stories, you have to have a special freight elevator and things like that. Yes,
I just got word of that.
I saw it today. So
Yeah,
this presentation was already created when that happened. But, yeah.
Hot off the presses.
So it's that square footage per footprint of the building or per floor space for the entire building?
Total square footage is that cost, and it's kind of averaged over. But this is where, once again, you can see it's double the cost to go from a 3-story to a 10-story, at least. Right? And we have an architect here. I don't think my numbers might be a little low, but they're not.
I don't necessarily do 10-story buildings, but it is more complex to build those buildings. However, what this group should also understand is the impact on city infrastructure is dramatically lower. You don't have to plow more. You don't have more sewer lines. You don't have more of a lot of things. You know, police response time to a 10-story building is the same as to a 2-story building. All of those things are true. So, you know, the collective term that we use is sprawl. You can have more people living in a smaller footprint and other city services, which are money over time. So if we're talking money, are much less.
Okay, so this is does this help people to kind of understand a little bit? Okay, so now this is where this isn't meant to shock or alarm anyone, but this is just what it is, okay?
It is.
So Thompson Block is 3 floors, 12,500 square foot per floor, so 37,500 square foot. This cost total of $12,187,500 to renovate. Okay,
Does that factor in the whole drama of that building?
it factors in the most recent developer's iteration. To hit an 8% return, which is required by any bank, a $325 per square foot building, that's how much it would cost per square foot to build. And so this is kind of build a building this size, so, you know, we would look at a rental unit about $6,000 a month. Okay. Our market rents in Ipsy are $1,400 to $1,900. And so that's where we have to figure out if we want housing in the city. We don't want houses to be built for $6,000.
There's a ton of Airbnbs in that too, so it's not really affording anyone any housing.
It's also not a really great example of how to build housing in that it was being built in an 1800s building that had all kinds of environmental issues, and part of them were self-inflicted wounds over years. So it's not a great example for how to get to housing. Like, it's an example within the city, but it's not how you do things.
Yes, 100%. Centennial building, 6-floor building, 64,000 square feet. The cost to build this today would be almost $19 million. The rents on that, make sure you get the rate of return, would be almost triple what they are. To build. So, that's something where there is a significant gap. To try to get this to happen. So, once again, this is just the cost based on square footage.
So are these slides that, just to give everybody, a perspective of if we're gonna go as a committee, that we push it for housing, what that really look like?
So the intent of this is just to show this committee what it costs to build. Right? I understand that, everyone. It's hard, in my opinion, this is where I'm more of a visual learner, and so it's good to see, okay, for us to build this building right now. It would be $19 million. We would have to triple the rent, and those rents are not actually that cheap because they're much smaller, they're really small offices right now. But it does cost a lot to build a building today, much more than it does to actually rehab some of these buildings, so, that's kind of what I'm trying to show is that if we want to keep our rents at roughly the same, or maybe a little bit higher. We have to figure out a way to help fill that gap, because right now. We would have to triple the rents essentially to get it to a point where we would want it.
So like that basically would be counterproductive to thinking saying affordable housing.
There's a way to do affordable housing with attainable housing, with market rate housing, there's a way to do all of that. But we have to figure out, are we gonna take a hit on the taxes side, like we do with most pilots? To get the affordable housing, or are we gonna try to get some more market rate housing in order to help fill some of the city's tax, potentially bring down our tax rates. To help make housing a little bit cheaper for everyone, and so there's no good solution, I don't have a solution, this isn't a recommendation, it's just.
So when I think of developments that have worked, that I've experienced either like in New York, there's Roosevelt Island, or in Portland, there was a Renko station, and I don't know how it was done. Because there'd be a mixture, so that developers would bringing in. Would have to work with pilot programs as well, also that way. Those pilot programs aren't ghettoized, but they're actually living within, and so there'd be all strata, mixed in, so it created a very peaceful environment because there was nobody without resources and nobody else stigmatizing anyone else because everybody, millionaires live right next to someone getting sick, that kind of thing. So if there's a way to combine them, so you have. And in terms, I think density is important, especially for impact on land, but also having different kinds of housing is important.
So there is a way to do it. The state of Michigan struggles when it comes to affordable housing, where they don't typically, like Dorsey Estates is one of the first true integrated multi-income developments. Typically, there's a pilot, even at, what is the place by where you work? The
Meridian.
Meridian.
Yeah.
There is a very specific Avalon housing part of that development. And then there's the Viridian group, because the way pilot and light techs work is the light tech is typically part of it. We would love to see more integration as far as partial pilot in a building. Well, we don't get to dictate to the state how their incentives are work. I mean, we got the first MISHDA funding for a brownfield program in the state in the city of Ypsilanti, and we had to push hard, and that was based on relationships. MISHDA had never once funded a brownfield project in the state. And so it's working collaboratively and with all of our partners to help push some of these things. But I do not know, and I could be wrong, this is just my knowledge, I do not know of a mixed piloted project that has ever been done in the state. We would love to see it. Now, Ann Arbor has some things because they build the density, and so they just require as part of this to have X number of units be affordable. Once again, their rents are $4,000, so they can actually dictate more than what our rents are because we don't want our rents. Yes,
Is it even feasible to have $4,000 rent here?
I hope not.
That's what I was.
No, but I mean, no, from a practical standpoint, would anyone move here and pay $4,000 a month.
I mean, there are people who list their houses for $5,000 a month. I don't think they get that. But there are people who try. I don't think so, but as housing becomes more and more scarce and more expensive to build, like materials are not becoming any cheaper. So we keep putting more tariffs on them, so it's challenging.
I wanted to echo that to you too, but, basically, like Diana was saying too, a lot of people that are not developers, I don't think they still buy those properties that they Airbnb it out. So they're not necessarily having somebody long-term there, but, you know, moving with the times, that could be something to think about.
So there are ways, and we stopped the ability to do that in Dorsey Estates. So in Dorsey Estates, you have to be homeowner occupied. So there are ways we can do that. However, that is a give that you have to give up, and so there is give and take there, and that's where being able to negotiate.
There should be a difference between like short-term rentals and, you know, having mixed family, you know, people being able to live in chosen families and. Not that I would want them more either, but,
So I missed the last meeting, has the consensus been that this is development is gonna be housing?
To be determined.
Somebody.
TBD.
nothing has been deferred.
About that.
Sorry.
I just want to take a temperature check because we're at about 8:10, and I know we have a lot of things on the agenda. We have a lot of questions, and this is important stuff. So
Okay, so then, the next fun problem is the tax exempt plan problem, which I think everyone's heard of, but I pull up the hard numbers. Okay. If you haven't heard of the tax exempt land problem in the city, city is 4.5 square miles.
here we go.
And this is where we're at. About 45% of our land is actually taxed. So that means that 55% of the land is not. Where does that land go? 26% is eastern, 11% is right of way, roads, sidewalks, things like that. 163 acres city owned, 134 is school and county owned, 82 is church owned. 73% is deed restricted affordable housing, which means we're not collecting really for any real taxable value. And then 33 acres is nonprofits. And so that is the whole pie of where our city's land is, which makes it hard because we have very little land that actually is taxable in the city, which creates many challenges. Now, to dig even deeper into this, so 40% of the land in the city is tax exempt. Meaning less than half the city generates tax revenue. Went through that. I think we have our developable land is scarce and every parcel matters, and decisions on how we do that should be correct, obviously. Now, not all city land is developed, right? So out of the 63.3 acres of land owned by the city, 163. All right, this is why I didn't email, because I want to make sure that's correct. 75 are parks, and our parks are pretty much parks. A lot of our parks are parks because you can't develop one. Like you can't develop at Riverside Park because it's floodway. You can't develop on Waterworks Park. You can't develop on Peninsula Park. There's just parkland that you cannot develop on. And I don't think the city would want us to turn Prospect Park or Candy Cane Park into a bunch of housing. I don't think that's really what the city wants to do. 7.7 acres are city facilities. 5.7 acres are public parking lots, which I'm not giving up on the fact that we need all those parking lots. I think we need parking, but I also think that there's ways to incorporate parking into developments. And then 10.6 acres are constrained parcels. So we have a former city dump. We have a couple walls in the south side that are kind of there, that are our city owned but not really developable. And then we have a property on First Avenue that has a boundary dispute, which we're working on. So that leaves 42.5 acres of the city are potentially developable. However, most of them are severely constrained, and 38 acres of this is water street. And so realistically, Some people say the city has a bunch of land that we could develop. Unless we want to start hacking away parks, which I don't think is our wants. That's kind of where this is for most intents and purposes. The last bite.
But where that taxable gap is and what's serving the community, not that Eastern's not serving the community, but I mean, I think like they could be paying, whether it's through services or taxes, like that's a huge percentage, so it seems immoral to then take that load and burden and do it to housing, you know what I mean? Like that's where we're expected to, oh, you know, where we don't have enough taxable or mom and pop shops or, you know, or have more Dollar Generals. It's not even a good dollar store. It's just.
I'm working with the mayor right now, actually get a meeting with the president to talk about potential sales, because EMU, when I was at Eastern, we had 25,000 students, now we're about 13,000 students, the campus has changed. And the future of universities have changed, and so there are some lands that the university isn't using that we want to have the conversation with them about, because I think it's important.
I would just add super briefly to Mary. Yeah, 50% of the 50% that is untaxed is eating, right? And so we have, with the new president, immediately came in open and, you know, willing to have dialogue about how does the university give back, you know, to the community. That could be selling land or in other way services. So we are in active conversation, meet pretty often, and I'm on their strategic planning committee, so that the point is having some lockstep together of how do you make this make sense for both of us as the university goes, so that the city. So.
One of the things that Katie asked me to talk about was setting aside land in Water Street for parks, essentially. And so, in looking at it right now, 38 acres is what we consider Water Street. However, 31 of them are developable because of the river trail. So we got a grant to put in the Water Street Trail, which is beautiful. If you haven't been on it, please go. It's amazing. But that takes out about 7 of the acres of the 38 acres. So right now, Water Street already has a 7-acre park kind of in the middle. If we set aside, let's say, 3 remaining acres as park, that would move 3 developable acres. Creating a dedicated park would add funding that the city has to pay to maintain and create a park. As Allison knows, parks are really cheap and easy to create. Joe. And you can get grants for these things, but almost every park development grant has a 50% match. So regardless, let's say it costs $1 million to create a new park, you're looking at, you know, it's $1 million, $500,000. The city has to come up with locally to actually put into that park on top of me. So you have the long-term maintenance and design and construction. I'm gonna finish this letter and then I'll get back to you. And then so realistically, if you take 10% of the land out of the ability to develop it, then that's 10 to 50% of less property taxes. And then you can add new costs every year to maintain that park. The best way that I have seen to actually do it is through a process like this, where any developer would have to build a park and then dedicate it back to the city. So then you do have the operating costs, but the cost to actually develop that park is part of the development. And so if they have to create it and then turn it back over, that at least has the development costs off of the city's hands. Chuck,
My question is, of the acreage that are currently parks, how would you characterize our ability to maintain those acres
getting better.
from a monetary point of view?
Oh, it costs a lot. And
Yeah,
honestly, we're working at.
So I guess I'm trying to put a number on it to a certain extent, and I realize it's an abstract question, but on a scale of 1 to 10, or a monetary scale of 1 to 10, what are we spending if 10 is what we should be spending?
In all actuality, we're probably spending $300,000 to $400,000 a year to maintain our parks, and that is not doing the capital improvements needed to mention.
And what should that number be
Probably $1 million.
a year? Thank you.
Cause most of our parks ain't even got no bath.
Working on it.
Fine.
But
Trying.
are like natural preserved areas a thing that can happen?
They are, you don't typically see a natural preserve area in a city like ours, because we have much less land and we have more urban parks typically. Now, with that said, Peninsular Park will probably become the closest thing we have to a natural park, especially because we will be expanding it when we move down. However, that's kind of rare in a city of our size to have a natural area, because typically the average natural area is hundreds of acres. And we don't have.
And Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, but like they still require maintenance costs and
Yeah, and you'd still run into the same issues with Water Street where that we've talked about with like some other things where it's like it is dirty property and is the best use of that to be held in the natural state? And the answer unfortunately might not be yes. I mean, it might look good to have trees growing on it, but it might actually be detrimental to trees are sucking up whatever's in the ground and passing it on to birds. It's not helpful. So you get a lot more skepticism from, you would get a lot more skepticism on from folks, like at least from the county or other funding agencies on creating a public park out of a brown field or a natural area south of a brown field. It's not to say there's not valuable green space in this mix, but it means.
Do you have anything, Steve?
Uh,
You would kind of raise your hand.
You
so-
read your mind.
I did, but.
Okay. No, so this is kind of going, this is where, am I, oh yeah.
I just wanted to add to that, if we wanted to make it a park or a preserve, we would still have to clean it up first, right?
Yeah.
Because the city can't just call it something when it's contaminated, because then we would have the liability
right.
of anyone visiting.
Yes.
Yeah, we still legally have to have a fence right now. And will even after the cleanup this fall for a portion of it,
So
unfortunately.
every development every development has to have infrastructure, stormwater management, roads, utilities, parking, public amenities. Carving out the public land before we actually send it out for an RFP would increase the cost, but also constrict a developer to use a piece of property. I'll give you an example. You can do a lot of really cool stormwater management in the middle of a park. That like just looks like it's part of a park. Whereas we said this piece of property can't be used for anything because it's gonna be public land. It constrains certain aspects that may be the potential best area for infiltration of stormwater. And so the better approach is to require a developer to construct public spaces and then transfer back to the city. Like I said, it reserves you know, that certain areas that are prone to floodplain, open space could actually be part of the development and utilized as part of the overall ecosystem. And like, for lack of a really bad 90s movie, Biodome, where you can use certain parts for certain things. And still have it be open to the public. I've never used Biodome in a public meeting before, but I should understand the concept. There are places that you can do one thing that also do another. And to say, we have an expectation that there is a public park in this development that you create. But we're gonna let you master plan this thing. Oh. All right, go through all this. Oh, no, the slide. I'm not gonna wait. I'll get through this slide, so. Takeaways I'm hoping you get from this. If we're at $75 million in new taxable value, $6 million roughly, up to $2 million. Of taxable value to the city. We are gonna need some sort of incentive. And $20 million is kind of just an idea. There is a gap in some of the taller buildings, and so just we need to understand that.
Based on this fictitious Water Street that you built in your mind.
Yeah.
That generates $1.7 to $1.9 million taxable
To the city.
to the city. What would it take to maintain those 38 acres from the point of view of the city? Is the 1.7 to 1.9 just enough? Is there extra
Oh.
revenue there?
So it all depends.
Sort of roughly all in.
Yeah, so it really depends on how it's laid out, right? Because the less dense, the more sprawling a development, the more it actually costs the city to maintain. So if you have a single family home, the city provides trash service. If you have an apartment complex, they have to provide their own trash service. If it's a public road, the city has to maintain those roads. Yeah, I would say that. Single family residential is the most expensive type of land use to have, because still. You don't have the economies of scale.
But the assumption in your $150 million. Isn't just single family residential, it's a complex mix of things, but of course, it's also fictitious. So
Yes, it's completely fake.
I'm not putting you on the spot in that regard. But. My question is the city expecting? At the level of development you're thinking, would the city be expecting that there's extra money?
Yes.
Or is it just enough to pay for?
No, I would say there would be extra money. The cities. Most of the city's basic costs are already there, so it's not like we would need to add another fire department. To cover this.
Height?
Let's see.
Yeah, so the height
Height.
is the thing,
Height
right?
is-
So we just purchased a new truck that can go to a certain height.
Yeah.
And if we build higher than that, then we have to increase our infrastructure for
I've lived through that.
doing that.
But like, we want development, right? We can't have development without some, like sooner or later, there's gonna be costs related that come back to the city.
It's actually a
Can't
reasonable
say-
question in this context is. What is the highest building in the
Right now, we
city?
have 10-story, I think 11-story buildings, is the tallest building we have in the city.
But my point is, until you actually see what the development, I feel like we're almost getting like too theoretical here, like. Until you actually see what a proposal is, to ask what it's gonna cost the city to maintain it, to me, seems like a little bit beyond. So I'm sorry, I'm just kind of trying to get like park back here, you know?
I get that. My question had to do more with sort of, as a kind of an abstraction, because that's what it is. Does it feel like it's enough, just sort of, oh, that's gonna be what it costs to maintain that environment, as opposed to, oh, that's twice as much money as it would cost to maintain that environment?
So the city of Ann Arbor doesn't have a ladder truck that gets to the top of the 20-story building.
No.
Like there's,
Of course not.
the ladder truck's a ladder truck, we're required to have one because we have 10-story buildings. But we're not gonna need a new ladder. Like I said, I don't see us really needing even a new shift or to build a new fire station, like, that's fine. City Hall, we're not gonna hire new staff, because realistically, we could add 1,000 residents and not do it. Now, policing, that gets to be a little bit more challenging. If we are adding 1,000 new residents, we might need potentially there, but once again, we'll be able to figure that out over time. And so I think that this would be overall, how it's constructed, a net positive, which is what we do need as a city. We need a positive increase in tax revenue. What that exact number is would be really determined on the values as they come in, because once again, I'm picking a lot of these numbers out of the air. Because you have to have an idea. I hope you understand tax value a little bit better today than you did before you walked in here. And how incentives work a little bit better, and I also can sit down with any of you individually to go through it. I'm also not the best, I'm not the authority on any of this. It's just I've dealt with enough projects. I do understand it.
I also think it's important that like at this stage for the RFQ, like it's important for us to have this theory in our brain, but like it doesn't have to be in the RFQ at the moment, right? Like people are gonna submit their qualifications, then we'll enter negotiations where we'll start to like talk about these things, which will be like step 2 or 3, right? Like we're on step 1. Which is important. I'm not saying it's not important. It absolutely is important for us to have a concept of. I just want to make sure that we don't get stuck in these details, trying to nail that down in the RFQ. And I don't know that we will have an answer until we have a developer who we actually want to talk to and begin to negotiate with. Like, I don't think that that's right. Like, but this is conceptual as we
I
keep
get a bit of
mentioning.
a gut check. Who here feels like they kind of understand the development a tiny bit better? Who here has a lot more questions? No, so once again,
It's always questions.
yeah, but I know it's a lot, and I'm sorry, and I went way over time. I promised Katie I'd be done in 40 minutes. that didn't happen. But is there any last questions? And you will get this presentation. I just know of 3 errors that I need to fix before I.
And we can always have Joe back or ask questions, or I can bring you answers. And
But also, if you think of anything, here, I'll pass around a bunch of my cards. You can email me. I am here to help. Whoever wants it.
You know what I mean? And
Michelle.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
We took a lot, excuse me, we took a lot of time with this, so, I'm gonna make sure when we do get off into our, discussion, that we
I
try
need
to,
the whole file.
that we try to be somewhat concise, and if there's anything that somebody needs to talk to somebody directly about, just wait to have their meeting, or get somebody's number or something, so we can kind of start moving, 'cause me frankly, I feel like the intensity for this, for me, is gonna feel like we not doing nothing at the proper time, get handle business, and we trying to figure out each individual thought process on this when we not meeting. And we got avenues of lines of communication to kind of have these sidebars and things like that. Collective, so, theoretically, conceptually, let's just get the bid, let's get to work, you know what I'm saying?
Values of breakfast share out 1 minute each. No, I don't.
well, some folks have sent it in, some folks haven't, so I think that it, but yeah, I think that, however you guys want to do it.
So is it cool for anybody who don't want to physically share to put it in email, like say already did, so we still have it? That's cool, everybody cool with that? Anybody opposed? Okay, can we have like maybe 3 or 4 people share theirs? That's more of a, maybe want to be more a little bit articulate, so we're gonna break that down. Is that cool as well? Any objection? Okay, so who would like to share their benefits and beliefs?
I was sure my because I was really proud that they got, I could do it in like 1 minute, and I was like really good, like, no, we gotta like, don't even take too much time. And I thought your writing was beautiful, and I wanna go, like, it was really nice just that you spent that time to write that out, so I'm gonna mirror that and put this in an email just to share for Katie for a little bit more to digest, but I think after crunching this over in my mind a lot, I think 3 things that are important to me to see Water Street move forward with are concept of sustainability, affordability, and connectivity, or possibly movement, which is how I see that site integral into how our whole community moves around. Don't want to try to explain more because we can pass to somebody else, and then Katie, I'll make it.
Third one was what?
Connectivity.
Connectivity.
Or movement.
Yeah, I had move in my head and I was like, what was it?
Yeah.
Connectivity, okay. Thanks.
Anybody else? I'm not gonna be too articulate. I just feel like even just coming with that after that presentation, I'll probably have to go back and check mine and come back. But more importantly, I think that we have to keep the people first with this more so because it's not just like it's like it's gotta be practical. I know we gotta think down the line, we gotta be practical too. So, we gotta be practical. I didn't know that we only had this amount of taxable stuff. So we trying to think about how we gonna sustain the city for 100 years. It's stuff that we can't even do if it was 200 years, so like, we have to think about that in a sense, like we can reference Ann Arbor, but Ann Arbor is a affluent, wealthy town, so I don't want nobody paying $6,000 for nothing in Ipsy, because I know everybody around this way ain't got it like that. So I don't want to bring people that's not from Ipsy to come with their money to come bring different values to the community that may in turn changes from Ipsy if some of us not here, our legacy is not here to really keep Ipsy what it is. So just I don't know. Anybody else? So we can put it into the email.
Oh, did you? I just, yeah.
I really want to hear.
Yep, I just got Diana's.
Dallas, I really want to hear yours. I don't.
I might want to email up, but I'm scared to say, like, I feel like my values, like, are we using value in like what I want or value in
what you want? Denise, you want.
Okay, so not like high level.
No, this you, Clint. Who are you? Straight up.
I mean, so when I tried to think about it a little bit before this, but I don't think I have a complete thought. I think I value connectivity. I value complete streets. following like there's NACDO Urban Design Guide, there's the Complete Street Principles that are available online. I value those being followed. I value connectivity, that's part of that. And I value diversity in use type and construction. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
What is diversity in use type in construction? I guess I know what diversity in use type. What does diversity in construction mean?
Like, you know, like maybe there's townhomes, maybe there's duplexes, maybe there's 5/1, which is like 4 levels of apartments above 1 floor of commercial, which would, in my opinion, make sense on Michigan Avenue and help to calm Michigan Avenue from the racetrack it is.
So,
One more thing, sorry. I value making sure the community is heard, and we haven't had a lot of community input from people showing up to this meeting, but we do have the recordings from when Carl Wortman did the community input sessions. And so I would value that we go back and listen to what the community said. That's why.
I want to uplift what Ron had added to the agenda too, about having all of our meetings, like scheduling more of them, and that way we can promote it to our community.
Yeah.
I would like to have it at different places too, like the South Side and the rest.
so we can move to the review.
No, okay. Like it.
On that page 1 or share with other people already.
So there were a couple sections that are that I put comments that were, there was a values section, I believe, that said committee. And then there was also,
I think, if you say item 5, you want to address 8 and 9. 8. What item did you want to address?
8, I'm sorry,
that was in the minutes, was 8 and 9. So yeah, he was talking about
8 and
the 100-year vision and how we use that. I think is how what we wanted to do. So we can have that discussion.
Yeah, the floor is yours, Chuck. What we doing with it?
as I said before, the 8 and 9 characterize my relationship, did not characterize my relationship to the 100-year vision the way I saw it.
You're talking about bullet point E.
No, he's talking about the 100-year vision that,
Talking about
oh,
that
Yeah.
in the minutes,
Right.
item 8 and 9 did not characterize my relationship to the 100-year vision the way I had expressed it at last meeting.
And I think earlier it was said that then there'll be maybe a note added to say that.
yes, yep, and I will change the minutes. However, I think that it's to your guys to determine, do we want to have that discussion now of whether or not you'll use the 100-year vision as an addenda to the RFQ? Because that was the discussion that was at the last meeting
Right.
that he's saying he's not comfortable with. I thought there was consensus. There is not.
I would also like to say that at the last meeting, I told Chuck that I would send pictures of the Post-it notes that we all took so that you could see the different handwritings and stuff. And I didn't do that until the beginning of this meeting. I'm sorry, but now you have them, so maybe they can be reviewed and then we can touch base on that after. But you have them now.
It feels like the logical question is maybe what doesn't align, we weren't here, so
Right.
this is going over us. What doesn't align? What part of the 100-year vision doesn't align, what needs to be changed?
There are numerous things, they can be interpreted as wordsmithing, but in my mind, they're not, and therefore, for me to start wading into certain concepts in there would take some time. And that's not allowed, that's not allocated right now. And so just numerous points and from my perspective, they're not superficial, they would require a little bit of discussion. So I don't know how this group would like to deal with that.
How much time do you think you need? And then we would allocate that to discuss it. Because it's just equally as important, I think, to us, that we do agree with it, so if we're gonna come to a consensus, we need to discuss it. So how much time do you think you need?
I honestly don't know. Half an hour would be more.
I'm okay with that, but I don't have it in front of me at all.
Yeah.
Maybe
You don't have the 100-year
I
vision.
can
No.
forward it again. But to have
I
it-
thought it was distributed to everyone.
Yeah, I haven't like really looked at it since last one, and I was just gonna say, I feel like if this is the discussion we're getting into, maybe should this be on the agenda for next meeting where we
Yeah.
can actually reread it? 'Cause I don't think that it's not fresh in my mind at all either anymore, so.
Okay.
You know, maybe that's something that we bring back and we take a look at. The one thing I really liked about that vision is I think if we like try to get us all on board with the vision statement, that could be a really hard thing, because we're gonna bring a lot of different perspective to it. Just kind of to share my take on that thing. It's just that it provides, there is a very formal RFQ that's happening here that is going to be like very engineered, and my God, wait till you see the brownfield plan, that'll be a result of this, like, there is a lot of very strict writing detail, you know, that 100-year vision is the only thing that I've seen us like, you know, produce yet that actually has some kind of a community voice in it. Now, is it perfect for everybody? No, you know, I'm not gonna say that vision has to be in 100% agreement, but I do think it's really nice to bring something in that talks, that speaks a little bit to like who we are as a community, and not, you know, how long is the border to border trail? What is our population density? And so maybe we can kind of work on that in our value, in the vision and goal statements, to try to bring our voices in that way. If maybe that would be like a better way of, Chuck, that we could kind of like move that.
And I think so, and that's why I say it's
Yeah.
hard for me to say, because I mean, certain things are questions or, you know, expressions that I think need to be discussed and altered. But some of them is, I'm basically saying there are things missing, which means I can't tell you how long it would take to discuss it. It's like,
Sure.
there's information and things that are not contained that need to be contained from my perspective. You can all disagree, and that's perfectly fine. But from my perspective, there's chunks of things missing. And therefore, how do we discuss that? Because the author of it put in what the author of it put in. And I'm saying, from my perspective, I would put in other things because I value them.
I think she wasn't just an author, though. She was facilitating a meeting. And so again,
So
we
maybe,
can't, let me finish my thought. So, we can't read your mind. So I don't know if you have 2 thoughts of things that are missing, or 10 or 50. So this is why, I understand that if, you know, maybe you just said 30 minutes, you know, in terms of to have a reasonable discussion where we're actually getting to the meat of whatever you think you're missing. Because again, we can't read your mind. Let us know, and then we can allocate to discuss it. Right.
Wait, so I want you to go to your thought, then we're gonna go straight to you. Go ahead.
in a way, I don't. The things that I think that might, you know, might be missing, I think are also things I have brought up in other meetings, so it's not that it's automatic that they weren't stated. I wrote them on note cards or posted sheets and so on. And it's just a matter of how things get translated, and when you have 3 minutes to write on a post-it note, complex thoughts that you might have had for a long period of time. I mean, you know, sometimes it's still hard to get them in there just quite right, and I understand that, and I can appreciate why that's hard. But, I think these are. We're talking about planning something that is for the next 100 years or more. And we're spending just a couple hours doing it. I have pointed that out before. There's an irony there that's tremendous. These sorts of projects I have personal experience with them. People spend a whole lot more time planning and talking and wading through this stuff. A lot more than this group is doing. And so, I mean, we can spend the time that we have, and that's great. We can do the best job that we can, given the time we have. But as I say, with respect to the 100-year vision, there are things in it that I think I personally would like to talk more about.
What? Give me an example.
An example, the 200-year history from today back is not well represented.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, Katie, is it possible to share with us the 100-year vision in the same editable format as the first RFQ draft that you sent, like a doc that we could comment in, so that maybe we could do homework and see before the next meeting?
Yep.
Question, do we have any more like presentations or anything that we have to do before our next meeting?
Not unless there's any that you guys want. I don't think there's any other ones that we had that I remember hearing that you guys wanted thus far, because we've done.
So I'm asking that, can we all agree upon maybe the first 30 minutes with the, 7:15 was cool. I like that to give everybody a chance to actually get in as real.
Like,
That felt, the vibe was more organic, but I don't feel like, like what, to his, echo his voice, like, we have a serious task on our hands. And yes, we can do all the outside research and come inside here, but we need to have a set place where we can like talk outside, like talk, informally about it, but we gotta really kick it more about this situation, so I can't really understand what he's saying, cause he's got a lot of history to bring that might change my whole thought process of this whole scenario, so. So it's like, basically, what are we gonna do?
so, and I'm looking at this, is this the 100-year vision we talking about, standing on the Water Street in 2120?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a lot more that people wants to add, I get it. This was generated after we had met over there in the cold space? Yeah.
Yes.
The more cold.
Juanita keeping it real for us. This has been good. It's been good tonight.
Normally, this is the place where you want.
Not as cool. Okay, so.
I do totally understand what you're saying, and I agree to a certain extent that we need to kind of have more time to be kick it and actually get to the bottom of this, so. Is it okay we all agree on dedicating the first 35 minutes with a hard 7:35 stop?
A Joe Meyer, 35 minutes?
No, like,
It will be. It will be a Joe Myers.
I think we end the discussion there, like to limit the time, just because I think when the idea is fresh, right, I'm more interested and engaged. And then if we have a hard stop, we can come back to it at a following meeting. I would like to, I also think that it needs more discussion. But I also think like I can't sit on one theme for 2 hours and still be as enthusiastic as I was at the beginning of it.
Yep, I think that makes sense.
So
So
what
30
are we-
minutes for the 100-year vision discussion at the next meeting.
yes.
Got it.
What are we asking, that we bring more to it from each of us, or we try to let?
So either you comment in the document in between now and then, because
Right.
I'll send it out, or you can bring your thoughts to the meeting and communicate them there.
Right.
The other thing I would ask is that anybody who hasn't either spoken tonight about their values or hasn't emailed me to still do that, because then what I'll do is I'll compile those in that section of the document, so then we can also review that. And so then we're making progress on talking about those values and benefits that we want to see in a development. And so so again, if you haven't commented on that tonight, or if you haven't emailed it to me, make sure you do that. So that everybody's voice is in there, and then I'll put everybody's, even if they seem duplicitous, so that then you guys can see kind of the entire list, even repeated, so that,
Oh, I wanna ask you if you could send it back out.
yes,
I'll be at work, I'll be busy.
you're fine, yeah. No, that's great. It's just sending me the values and that you have
Oh, so you just want me to just say values and split?
and what they are. Yep.
Shout out to the team. I think we came up with our system too. So is there anybody that is opposed to our first 35 minutes being, like 15-minute kind of grace period, but 20 hard minutes after that? Real discussion. Because if everybody's here at 7 o'clock, that actually gives us 35 real minutes to really kick it.
All right, show us your hands.
Wait a minute, we're showing if we object to it?
If you if you agree. I'm trying to get consensus.
Gonna do that plus I'm sorry.
Yes, plus the values. So then how long do you guys want to spend on the values then in the next meeting? Reviewing it.
Give it a couple seconds. So I feel like if it's like, once you compile that thing, we all will be able to see what's what, and then I feel like we can leave a good 10 minutes.
Okay.
So that somebody can say, hey, I have a
Ron over here making decisions tonight.
Think this, I got questions for clarification, because something people are saying is like, kind of like, this what it is, so either you against it or not. We might have clarification, right? So like clarification moments. So I think.
So 10 to 15 minutes there.
By 7:45, we can get into actual handling bill.
Like that, yeah, 10 to 15, yeah,
Yeah, 15.
10 to 15, I mean, maybe it won't take that long, but yeah.
If I say 15, right? Leave that 15.
I have a question. I don't know that I'm advocating for this, so I'm just wondering if this needs to be part of this discussion. So we talk about like our interest in the 100-year statement and how to put some of that in some respect into here. And then we're talking about how to put our values that we're gathering, again, somehow into some statement. Where does the community benefits?
I think there and that values is
Okay,
that's
so-
that's
maybe
sort of
we
what I'm
should
calling the
talk about
values
and
is
then-
values / benefits that you like, things that you want to see.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think that some people are saying affordability, right? So like that's a benefit that we would want to see is affordability.
So use our values.
A benefit would be sustainability. A benefit would be connectivity,
Okay.
safe or complete streets, right? Like those would be the benefits that we want to see from something.
Okay, thank you. I needed my mind to get to where that organization was. Thank you.
So if you use if you look at the guide that came to the CBO and.
It's bent down.
Yeah.
All right, if you use the guide that was provided in the book, right? Or try to relate the benefits to that structure,
Yeah, okay.
That way it gives us a framework for explaining how those values have meaning to the developer when they read the RFQ.
Okay, thank you. Putting those things.
So that's looking by like 7:50 of each meeting, however many we about to use these last two. It looked like we're gonna have a good hour or so to really transition to get to work done.
Since I know house meeting, so.
Have we,
So I said,
have we reviewed the, like, are we leaving room for reviewing the RFQ at all?
I mean, I guess the question also becomes like with the rest of it, because a lot of it is regulatory, right? Like a lot of it's like apply by this time, do this time, like right, like it's a lot of that sort of structure. And I'm happy for you guys to edit it or make changes. I just haven't gotten a lot of that yet. In the other document, I did get a couple, but then now we have a new document that AKT has gone through, and I feel like it's a lot more solid than the previous document. And I'm happy to send it out for you guys to give me as much feedback as you want to give me. I'm just not getting a lot of that. And then we add review RFQ to every agenda, and then we
I have.
how to do it.
Things to review in the RFQ if we have time to talk about reviewing the RFQ.
Let's do it.
I want to talk about 8.0 city vision and goals.
Well, I would say.
It's page 22.
On the packet, got it.
Okay, it says committee needs to provide overall vision, for Water Street. I would suggest including design types that the committee does not want to see. We are requesting a conceptual design approach as part of the submittal. So we need to make sure this section is clear. So the information provided meets committee items. And so it's asking us to name some things that we don't want. And I have a list of them. And so I don't want any industrial uses on the site. I don't want any traditional one-story strip malls. I don't want big box stores. I don't want standalone drive-through restaurants like Burger King because drive-throughs contribute to sprawl and create a lot of like circulation problems. That's my list. And you know what, I'll also add detached single family housing.
Can you say the second and third one again? I got the industrial sites, which I agree. The traditional one bedroom, I mean, one.
Yeah, I missed the second one too, industrial,
One
in between industrial,
Story strip.
one story strip mall.
Which I agree to.
Big box stores,
What's that? That's what I mean. I got.
that's like Walmart.
Target.
What if it's a grocery store?
Yeah.
Aldi.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by industrial? There are industrial zonings that are defined. There's light industrial, heavy industrial,
Sure.
depending on the nature of where you are and what they value, they might describe it differently. If someone wanted to
I'm okay with light industrial.
make cabinets,
Yes, I'm okay with light industrial.
so I actually think that needs to be explored in detail before it gets sort of the heavy sledgehammer of no industrial.
Sure, I agree.
So what is the land zone for?
Center district.
I'm sorry.
Center district. And there are overlays I was looking at right now. I don't know all of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is included in the one-story commercial, like strip mall, but that just that there would be no parking lots. You know, that there would be storefronts or buildings directly on the sidewalk to make it safer for pedestrians. And also snap houses, if we do have single family homes, but they're not like garage heavy for extra square footage, yeah, the pedestrian space is centered on sidewalks. I don't know what the fancy architectural term for it.
Now houses?
Yeah, snout houses, yeah, they're the ones, you know, it's in those, in McMansions, and they have like, the snout is the garage, like.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, we're down to architectural
Now
feature.
houses, there's something called, it's pretty hard to zone against a snout house. I mean, you could, I shouldn't say that, you can zone against them. But that's how you do it. You structure your zoning codes and allow a garage, for example, in your front yard. And there are ways of doing it also in terms of the proportions of a property will demand that the garage gets sent to the rear. But that's a really important thing to me, because one of the best ways of dealing with that is designing blocks with the alleys. That's how you get the garage in the back in an urban environment. And that's exactly how, gotta point in the right direction, all of those blocks work. That's how those blocks would have worked. That is how those blocks do work. They all have alleys. All of them.
But, in our.
Now, the city, by the way, isn't that happy with alleys.
And what we are doing in the subdivision and goals, then do we say we want pedestrian centered design rather than trying to make the kind of codes? Or are we doing?
You would get pride here. Right? You just
I think it depends on what you're asking. If you're asking something that would be perhaps illegal, then it would have to be as he said, that would have to be changed in the zoning ordinance.
But the developer is gonna read this section and go, okay, they don't want all these things. I'm gonna come with a different solution. They're not gonna come with those solutions.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure that they're not gonna look for loopholes. That's where I feel like code and policy.
I mean, but we're gonna
not
review.
protected. Right, you
Yeah.
said. Just that, so that's straightforward. That's where I, okay, we could do the code, but then. To drive it home. Because we want sidewalk, friendly or pedestrian standard, design. You define some other version of a smart house. I don't,
Be explicit about it, even though it's exactly like codes and.
And there must be kind of some way to do this because, like, I know down in like Pittsfield, sorry, no, that's not Ipsy, but like they're demanding more greenways and bike lanes with all of their developments, so they're doing something to ask for that. Kind of like Dallas with your concept of the complete streets and the desire for walkability, it's like, I would really hope that any development puts sidewalks, a bike lane, and tree lined streets, just for you know what I mean, but I don't know, maybe that's already redundant to what you guys would request in the city, right?
No, I mean, I think that's, Jeremy put this in here, right? Like from AKT. And so I think that like, it's valuable to say the things we don't want to see, but I think it's just as valuable to say the things that we do want to see, right? Like it's just two ways of looking at the world, right? And so I think that saying we want complete streets, things like that is valuable in explaining what we want for a development. For sure.
I agree with not wanting all of those things except for detached single family housing. I could probably be swayed, but you just mean an independent house, right?
Yes, I suppose. I could be swayed, like Dorsey Estate has single family houses and it's at a density level that I think is pretty good for being single family. Yeah.
I just like that it feels more natural in a city, I think, to have different types, like you said, different construction. Diversity in construction use or something.
I don't know if that's the right.
But yeah, saying like a little house next to an apartment building, next to a store. It's nice.
Like organic, cities grow and I think that again, it attracts different economic levels and everybody's together. And like the idea that they can a mixture. Again, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Orenco Station in Portland. It was just complete development that was done all in one piece and made to feel like it is. So there are little townhouses or single family homes, there are condos, and it's all along the train line. So it's like 10 minutes into downtown Portland. And then they have like the equivalent of Fresh Time here, like a little at the grocery store, but it's like huge. And there's apartments above, I think, that kind of thing. And then there's the meeting space in the middle. It's all very walkable and bikeable. And it was literally designed like all in one chunk. Right? But it looks like, like the walking, which is one thing that I love about Ipsy, right? You see these huge mansions, but then there'll be little prefab homes, and there'll be apartment. I love all of that mixed in together.
So you said you had more than one? Or that was on the thing you had?
Yeah. Those were the things that I didn't want. I had goals for the city of, how are we recording everything that's being said right now? Are you like?
I'm writing minutes, but I am also recording the meeting, so I'll go back and listen to the the meeting as well to make sure I didn't miss things because I'm also doing other things.
Steve,
Yeah.
You gestured.
I was reading something here. I was trying to look up the development that Diana was talking about and I misspelled it, so I'm like,
It's a weird name, ORENCO.
oh.
We have about 15 minutes and we have 2 more things to get through.
I actually tried to email them. I don't know, maybe somebody else could do it with me.
Station.
Oh, yeah. You want things?
Two more
You
things.
got one more scheduled meeting that's scheduled, right?
We have an August meeting, so we can also talk about dates then, if we wanna put it off.
Okay. For the next meeting, so we can focus on, the tribal, talk about our last 15 minutes here. Anybody disagree? I mean, well.
Show me, show me a hands. Or show the hand.
So like,
And
talk about future next week, maybe the next meeting, and still talk about the Michigan travel, stuff right now. Without that.
And can I share my goals out real quick first? Okay,
I just asked you a minute ago.
my goals, again, under bullet A, create a third high-density walkable district in walking distance to downtown and Depot Town. Create a straight shot pedestrian connection from Waterworks Park to River Street. Initiate development that snowballs the future development of the site. Balance community benefits with taxable development. Develop in a historically relevant manner and increase available housing X number affordable, question mark.
Well, and maybe it's better to not, right, like the X, I'm just thinking like. I don't know if we know that number,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it is X number,
Conceptually.
because I think that. Well, I don't know if we do, I guess that's my point, is do we want a number in a concept, right? Like, I think that like that will, like, that's literally the devil in the details. That
Maybe.
maybe it's a percentage, yeah.
Still be speaking, I don't know the word, but you know, in terms of how people get along, and it's truly diverse. I would want there to be a large percentage of affordable housing. I'm not really 100% sure what that would be, and maybe I could do research, like what did they do at a rental station or was it on island that feels
Sure.
like everybody's represented? You know, is it 10%? Is it 20? I don't know.
I just wonder if that's something that we would negotiate further into they start to pencil out a concept, right? As we get something where this isn't quite that stage yet. That's the one thought that I have.
I got you. If I was advocating for the developer, I would be like, hey, let me give y'all some ideas so that we can bounce with too. So like he kind of, that's why I think the variable was the X, right?
Yep.
Yeah, just we should include affordable housing.
Yes, but then it should be there for sure.
So thank you. The last time we had a developer engaged, a lot of these things came up and were included in that. So if you look at that and how that plan looked, you can see what some of that stuff looks like, but it also became a tripping point in the conversation with the developer. Because when it came time for the discussion of what percentage should be affordable housing, there were numbers that were presented, and the developer, I'm not saying that all developers would do this, because this particular developer was not particularly responsive to what we're talking. They were on certain level, but the head guy was just kind of dismissive of a lot of things. And when we hit 20%, he's like, economically unfeasible, we can't do it. End of story. And we're like, that fell apart for other reasons, but just so you know, they're defining what we want, defining what our fallback point is a good way to look at that, because those are, Ann Arbor has, certain number that has to happen in every development, those kinds of things. So it's doable, but have some numbers that you're targeting and what you're willing to accept.
Because we've been down this road.
Right.
But sometimes the number isn't an absolute number, it's a percentage of the project.
Right.
Sure.
And so if you were to say we want, whatever, pick a number, 20 affordable housing units, and they're only building 30 units, that's one thing. But if it's 20 units and they're building 200 units, that's another thing. So the percentages matter, and this is where Joe's presentation is based on $150 million for investment, where he started out by saying it could be $450 million. And that's true.
And we could have a developer who wants to do housing and another developer who's going to do commercial. And right, like, and then that's like putting that percentage in there, or somebody maybe, I've actually spoken with a developer recently who's talking about doing senior housing, right? And so like if they're doing senior housing and it's, but maybe it's, I'm not saying it's unaffordable, but maybe it's not in the affordable category, or it's different. I don't know if if it's a different benefit of something that we do need, then how do we weigh, right? Like I just don't have a concept of how we would weigh that versus.
That brings up something that hasn't been brought up before. Something I'm sensitive to that I want to share is there's a concept of housing, which we have used liberally. And then you get into developers who specialize and they'll talk about senior housing or student housing or other kinds of housing. And I have been involved in construction for a long time, and I say, okay, it's senior housing. Can I live there too? Can you live there too? Why not? Of course you could live there too. You can physically use those spaces. But they're gearing it toward market, and they might make subtle changes. And those subtle changes, there's a real common one in Ann Arbor because of the university. It's basically a living unit with 6 bedrooms, and they're designed in such a way that the bedrooms have a certain autonomy that you can live in that bedroom and you can interact or not interact with the other 6 bedrooms. And therefore you can basically live in a 1-bedroom apartment with a shared kitchen living space independently of your other 5 roommates. They're geared for that. That's student housing. It makes no sense to a family of 5 children to live in an apartment necessarily like that. They may not want to buy it, and it's economically not in that market either. So we also have to be careful of falling into those little traps of the kind of housing. I would like to argue that we want housing, no strings attached. We want it to be structured such that many different kinds of people can live there, and you don't have to have a label on your forehead to be there.
Who's gonna get a tattoo?
What you've done.
All right,
Senior, 60, and I turned 65. No, so we got
6
here.
minutes. We got 6 minutes. We all are in agreement to putting item C into.
yeah, we were,
Next move.
yep.
Can I ask a question if this might not be a good idea, but like preface that, but like. A lot of things that I feel like we're talking about are definitely could be described and detailed in words, but. Could like we as a very diverse like committee provide some images of what is IPSI? And I leave that very open of what is IPSI. If your love of IPSI is the materiality of Depot Town, or if your love of IPSI is the kids playing around Prospect Park, whatever. But like, is that just off the mark? Is that almost like too community? So I was like, I feel like if the developer isn't in here, can we provide, maybe this is something we could do as like kind of like a committee, is provide some images of our community that we feel like represent us and what we're looking for? No pictures. Just pictures.
Like,
Yeah.
like a vision board.
Hands, pick people.
Like, other than, I'm saying like. there's-
Yes, Juanita, we're gonna make you draw comments. The cartoon strip.
You have to do with your values next time. I'm just like there's nothing other than an aerial view of Water Street. There's no images, and maybe I'm just that person who likes pictures, but I was like, could we like suggest some picture edits of like what like IPSI looks like in here, like some added images, or is that just not, is that kind of frivolous?
Is your concern that potential developers won't have a feel for the community?
I guess so, although maybe they're all local, but I was like, if you're
it's-
really missing a lot of like the diversity that we talk about in construction and existing community when it's just words, right? So I was like, what if we all brought in like one picture and this could be incorporated into it and kind of prefaced as the pictures were compiled and shared as like images of IPSI for you to understand our community or something. You know, is that something, if people don't like that, you have no problem.
I want to bring more warmth to this kind of stuff.
I just think that words are only gonna take the option of diversity in housing, diversity or complete streets, like if we have local examples where they seem to be working, would that be useful to share? It might not be, maybe developer only wants to read, that's perfectly acceptable, no pictures, less like print or
Well,
something.
what if it were example development projects that are interesting to you, or Renko, I'm not sure how you say it.
Yeah.
Station, a quick look, it's
Yeah.
visually a very interesting thing. A gentleman who came to, I think, our first meeting talked about, I marked it, but I don't remember the name of it, a development in the Rochester area. That is also very interesting along the water, so it has that connection. As an architect, I will tell you that when my clients bring me examples of things that they appreciate, it helps me a lot.
Right?
It need not be consistent from my perspective. It need not, but it starts to say, this feels like what we are thinking. And ask yourselves, what does Michigan Avenue, what would you like Michigan Avenue to feel like? What do you want it to look like? Because, it came up earlier, somebody started talking about, the Michigan Avenue being a racetrack. Officially, Michigan Avenue isn't a part of Water Street, but I always talk about the fact that Water Street's way bigger than this 38 acres. It's dramatically bigger. It includes South Huron Street. It includes across Michigan and up into the park. It includes way east of it, because that's what it will influence.
Well, I actually would propose we would do both. I would say you could add images of the community that we think kind of describe our community into this, and then a list of inspirational projects that we've looked at or whatever.
That are here or not here.
Yeah, here or not here. I think that would be great. I think that's a great appendix,
I'm good with it. Send them over.
I've got one in it.
Yeah, I don't know what the pictures are, but maybe I'll come with like one picture and just see, like, if they can be, we give them to Katie.
Katie makes sense of it. Sounds good. I love those kinds of projects. Those are my favorite projects.
Thank, I'm sorry, it was a little bit of like sidewalk, thank you. Yeah, okay, yeah. I'll sign it.
So this next conversation will take more than 1 minute. So the question is, are we okay with extending a bit, or do we want to?
Just extend, you gotta vote to extend again.
Yeah.
And it's just to discuss the meeting.
No, it's not.
The tribal
I
stuff.
D.
What's up?
Extend.
Consent?
It'll take how many minutes
How
though?
many minutes?
We do 10.
Oh, yeah.
It's up to y'all, not me. I'm not the leader.
Time limit on it.
Presenting,
Well, it's 9:15.
presenting it.
So it's a discussion, but I have some things to report out. We have a couple of developments on this topic, so.
So can we, vote on 9:30 with the first 5 minutes doing directly to listening?
And we're gonna need the last 5 minutes to decide who the chair is next time.
Okay.
No, we got that, Diane.
Okay, but we need a vice chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right,
But we'll need a vice chair. Sorry,
Okay.
that's what we always need that time for still.
All right.
Go.
Great. So Carrie and I have been working with SHPO. We got a list. It was 24 tribes that are approached for things like this. And so we sent both letters and emails to all of them, all of the tribal contacts there. And we heard back from one, and he said that he was hoping to come tonight, but was not sure if he would be able to. So I sent him the link for both this meeting as well as the August meeting. I also sent him all of our agendas and minutes that we've had for the meetings, as well as the website, the Water Street website, so that he has all the context of things that we've discussed and that sort of thing. I also offered that if he couldn't make either of these meetings, if he wanted to meet outside of one of the meetings, I'd be happy to jump on a call with him as well. So he didn't say that he wanted to do that. I can keep you guys in the loop on whether or not that happens. I know that there was some conversations in email with somebody with the Nottawasapi tribe, and so I will after this meeting reach out specifically to her, because I want to make sure that there's not any miscommunication, because there was other there was other folks communicating, and I want to make sure that she feels directly communicated with from this committee, to interface if she would like to. So, that's sort of my update. Last night, council passed a resolution. I don't know if anybody from council wants to speak on that. The mayor.
Fundamentally, the resolution was just to name that we want to make sure that there's a process for engaging indigenous people and tribal, nations, even outside of specific projects, but generally, because we know the connection to the community and we want those relationships to be meaningful. And so fundamentally, that's what we decided, that we put in legislation, that is something that we are committed to doing and that staff will be supporting in doing that. So kind of what Katie's already doing for this body and reaching out, that will be ongoing work that staff and council will be doing, as well as including community members when that happens.
And so I think that like it's two things going, because you guys directed me to do it, and so I did it. And then also we're doing this other larger concept. And for me, that just felt authentic from who we are in Ypsilanti, and that like we have never done that as a like, hey, we'd like to build a relationship and have a larger conversation about like what would be honoring to you guys. Of course, there's all the regulatory things that we have to do. And like when we get federal funds, we have to do it, and we have to notify and like things like that. And of course, we'll continue to do those, but like to be more intentional, I feel like outside of like this one project like Peninsula Dam or this one project like Water Street, like to just be more intentional about it. There was something else I wanted to say about that. I don't remember what it was. Is there anything else, Carrie? Yeah, please do.
So part of the discussion last night was there was a standalone general sense that this needs to happen. Part of that was spurred on because of the conversation here, which said specifically that we're going to do that. And so the question of whether that resolution included Water Street or the dam was a topic of discussion, and we excluded specific projects because that was a statement of value and intent that besides all these things, which we're going to do anyway, and that we've already got specific language to, this is something on top of that. So it wasn't specifically included in that resolution, all the individual projects that are ongoing that we have specific conversations about, but more of a general sense.
I'd like to see it included though, because I don't think it's on top of it. It's, I think you're working on this more general global process, which is important, but then also we're in the middle of one, right? But that should be included, so this doesn't get swept away and doesn't have all the benefits that you're building with the more global, right? You know what I mean? Like that whatever process we get added in this global way from council, I would love to see that included in on ongoing, right? So that because I feel like it's just uplifting the level of intentionality, right? So as you gain information from either tribal nations or indigenous people, and that gets incorporated, that we should uplift all of our projects. And it doesn't even have to be these two. It can be,
No.
you know what I mean? Just so that, okay, we didn't do it before because we didn't have it, but now we have it. So I would like to see it included. Then as we learn, as we engage, I'm assuming that's going to grow or they're going to develop.
Well, am I hearing you right? Are you just clarifying to this council right here that the proposal that was proposed did not include the two previous ones that we have now, which is the dam and the Water Street?
Correct.
It didn't include it doesn't refer to a single project. It refers to all of the projects.
So they were definitely inspired by this very conversation that was created.
Yes. For sure. And also, like another one that we haven't talked about even is Prospect Park. We're doing some sidewalks right now in Prospect Park. And because it is federal funds, it's CDBG dollars. And so we have to do, right. Like, so again, there's times that regulatorily we have to do it. And so, but we don't always bring those up because you just have to do it. Right. And like, so that it's not always a discussion. It's not always something that comes to council because it's just legally, that's what we have to do when we spend those dollars on that project.
I guess the other point I would add from that is the question of it wasn't meant to exclude conversation. So folks have reached out to people already, right? And so it doesn't say that only Katie, Carrie could do that. Those are all great, but I, as a council member, cannot represent the city in any, with any tribal government. I'm just done, but the mayor is the only person that can do that. So we can still have those conversations, but if it's official, then we have to go to that. We still develop relationships. Everybody can do that. That's not there at all. But in terms of what we can agree to and state on behalf of the city as an entity, we're very limited in that. So the best thing is to have as many relationships as possible, right? So everybody should be working on that and doing those things, but in terms of that comes back to staff and the mayor, right? To be official, if you're gonna come to an agreement, something like that, then it has to be all of council. So we can have conversations, be friendly and get to and develop those relationships, but we can't agree to anything as individuals.
Yeah, right, but I'm hoping that the process is, because I'm assuming, right, that the point is, what I would love to see in terms of that, what land back means, what I think it means in stewardship is, it's not just like literal land, right, but that the people who were here before and have this extensive knowledge through indigenous science and history have a voice in how the land is stewarded. And so we have that expertise, right, and that honoring, I think, our moral level and all of that too, but that expertise that was probably is more sustainable also. Right, so if we have that process, I mean, of course, we're gonna have relationships and all of that as individuals, but that if it's written so that, yeah, IPSI officially would work as a city, always engaging indigenous people, you know, whenever they want, I mean, they would choose and they would help us write that process so that that gets included in all the columns. Right, and for anything that might affect them, because that's gonna make everything more sustainable.
Yep.
I have two questions.
Okay.
One is, who responded? What tribe was that? And then the other one is there are 24 tribes to reach out to. And that's a lot, and I'm so sorry, but I would also, I'm sure you have a process and a plan, but you know, because tribal governments are people and they're always rolling off too, so if there's some plan for like, okay, every year we just email all 24 people, yeah.
So that's one thing that we are having conversations at the staff level now, is now that the resolution is passed, what is the most intentional way of doing that, and like what's the best way to do that? And I don't have the answer for you today because it was just passed last night at midnight, and so we haven't gotten there yet. Go ahead. Do you want to come up to the microphone though?
Sure, yes, sir.
The other thing I want to quick say before, while Carrie's making her way to the microphone, is that there's been some discussion about whether or why hadn't we done this yet, or why hadn't it gotten accomplished yet? And I want to make it very clear that that's because there was no federal funds that were being used for excavation purposes. So that's like when there's ground disturbances is when it needs to happen. And so that's not happened with any federal funds thus far. We've done an excavation project. It was with state funds. It's not required with state funds. And so it is with federal. And so that is the clarification there, that's why it hadn't happened yet. And so that's why we did it at the moment that we did it.
Really quick, just answer your question about like contacts and shit, like even you got a response like, oh, actually, this is an outdated email.
Right. Yeah, it's a new person that he's like trying to get.
Did in Washington County, happening in Washington County, they update that database with their contact information, so we pull from that. That's what SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office suggested. They also had like their list, but they're like also go there and make sure you have the list. Because like the Nada study, Karen Band of Potawatomi weren't on that list, but we know that they're engaging with the city, so
We added.
yeah, we're gonna also be, but what?
So the other question was who it was, and it was the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe of Michigan, their preservation officer, Gage Cole, I can't read the cursive, Colwell.
Oh, yeah.
I was like,
I would just like to say, me being a, community liaison, and advocate in the community, there's been times that there have been events one block away in our unhoused community. There was free food offered, good free food offered, and some people just don't go because they totally disagree with what's going on at the event. So I just wanna know, when you talk about 24 people and then only one person with, they cannot even wanna get down, that's what I'm saying, they cannot.
Oh, you mean like the
Like,
desire
they
to
might,
be involved?
yeah, they might not even wanna do nothing. Like, they might not even wanna holler at y'all about nothing. They might not wanna talk. They might wanna sue soon as y'all trying to do something without their consent. I don't know.
I think a part of it is, it's not necessarily about, I mean, folks, yes, have the right to decide if they wanna engage with us or not, but it's about our willingness and the intentionality of reaching out, right? And to make sure that we have as many voices as possible, as many folks as possible, to be able to help steward like the work with us.
On the back end of that, I was about to say, what tactics are we gonna use moving forward to incite anybody that may feel like that? And I was trying to give y'all actual examples from Ipsy right here, with people who really may need a meal, but may not wanna
Sure.
come.
We can make a drink.
Yeah.
Well, or you had a, sorry.
Yeah, well, I work for the state, we do this all the time. So you reach out to the roll call, and the roll call responds if they choose to, if they choose to not, because they're very prideful people. So you reach out to the roll call and you just make that a habit, you know what I mean? We are mandated by our policies to do it automatically when we find out it's any kind of relationship of Native American heritage. So,
Well, and also Carrie and I are consulting. If you want to name the person that's at Michigan State that you've been communicating with,
Well.
or just, there's a professor there.
The archaeologist, Sarah Service Evans, she's actually leaving, but Scott Slager, who used to be in my position with the city, who's a preservation planner, was great. Yeah, so I mean, I kind of, Scott's my point person because he understands this and everything, but the archaeologists have like, they provided a lot of information, and they've been really, really helpful with like how to go about this, but there are also other professionals who do the work of tribal consultation, not just the required section 106, but actually like working with at a community level, like what does that part look like? And I'll just share one thing I keep like thinking of in this conversation is, so Heather Howard, who is she's a professor of anthropology at SU, but she's also research faculty at the University of Toronto. And when we reached out to her, we're like, what does this process look like to kind of go beyond section 106? And she was like, can't emphasize enough the relationship. Like you have to be consistent. She was like, she gave some examples of projects. There's an interactive like history project with Toronto. It's called First Story Toronto. And she's like, that took 10 years to put together, like building the trust. So I think that, like, that's what I understand the intent of this resolution is, like, we want to move beyond section 106 and like, it will probably, like, to your point too, yes, it can be a little disappointing to like work on something so much and then you get one spot. But I think like being consistent, so like, next, like, we reach out again. And like,
And another idea Carrie and I had was like, maybe Carrie or myself would travel to go see them, right? Like rather than expecting them to come to Ipsy or them to email Ipsy, right? Like so there's options. And I think that there's vision that we have for this. And I think that I am more excited about this than I haven't been in a lot of things that I've done. I think that it's good work and it's intentional work. And so I think that it's meaningful. And so I'm thankful to this committee for putting it top of mind and pushing it. So I think that it's been helpful. And I think that Carrie and I've had some very dynamic conversations about it and been able to consult with some really cool people who are doing really cool work across the country right now in the space. And so I think it's been really useful.
it's also like come up for so many like
Yes.
inclusive signage projects.
Yes.
It's like, yes, this is so important, but like it's not our history to
Tell.
and also it shouldn't just be tacked on. It needs to be like, this should citywide, there's so many important parts of the city to consulting tribes and like where are those places you want to have interpretation or do you not, or like do you want to plant like
I feel like signage was always the answer, right? Like, and when you start to feel like you just keep putting a sign up, that doesn't feel significant or particularly valuable. And so I think that we were kind of looking for that, like, what's the next piece of this conversation?
But I went to a school in Evergreen, which has an integrated speech program. And one of their solutions, in terms of land back, which took them years, was to build a longhouse that
Yeah.
belonged to.
Great farmhouse.
Right, yeah, and so, and I don't know what the equivalent for the Potawatomi, but in terms of, again, asking them, so how do you want to use the space and centering that first.
Yeah.
Thinking recognition, yeah.
And projects are great because they give the city opportunity to actually like, okay, there's focus on this development, and there are funds potentially or whatever, like there are resources the city can offer them. So like that, this is really exciting.
Yeah.
We're at a super exciting time where, things can happen as a result of. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all right. I see that we need to end.
Bravo on the city for doing this. I gave y'all 2 extensions.
Yep, you gotta go. That's all right. We appreciate you. Yeah, we need the next co-chair. So we got Diana as chair, and then we need somebody as her vice chair. Who hasn't done it, who might be interested in doing it.
So that's for September, whatever we did.
Yeah, but
I'll do it.
the theoretical next meeting. Okay. Thank you.
We good?
We're good.
Get up out here.
Like that.
We are. The next meeting is August 20 something. It's 26.
Yeah.
It is. It's 26. Yes.
Is that the day after, can we like get off schedule? It sounds like.
No, we
And also,
Sorry.
These are.
Not trying to.
It's like.
I was there with you. I know.
I know, and I was like,
Today I felt like I was listening to an arts kids meeting in my office, and I shut both doors, and I was sitting there, and I was like, I was off screen. It was not easy.
I feel it now.
All right, thanks. Appreciate you.
The Republicans were messing with that in the budget. Did that go through? Did they?
They did get some of the money away, yeah. Yeah, but it was funds that were before, so it was, the problem was the funds were the 2025 funds that had been unspent. And it was unspent because they hadn't got, but it was because they hadn't got contracts for so long, that they couldn't spend it quickly enough, and so. But
That
yeah,
seems-
some of them did.
Speakers, big.
Oh, oops.
Hang up.
Yeah.
Unspent.
Yes.